All right, today we're going to be doing lecture 19, intercepts. So I wanted to start off with the definition of X-intercepts. We're going to be finding X-intercepts and Y-intercepts. So an X-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. The point where the graph, usually it's going to be a line, it's the point where the graph crosses the x-axis, and we call that the X-intercept. And then there is the Y-intercept. That's going to basically be the same thing, except it's where it crosses the y-axis. So it's going to be the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. So the x-axis is going to be this horizontal line. It goes from left to right. I'm going to put arrows at both ends, and I'm going to put a lowercase x over here. This is called the x-axis. And then the y-axis is going to be this vertical line that goes through the middle. I'm going to put arrows at both ends, and I'm going to put a lowercase y at the top right here. That's called the y-axis. It goes up and down. So if I'm graphing a line, and I'll change my color to red so you can see it, it's going to be a straight line, and usually it'll cross both the x-axis and the y-axis. So I'm going to put arrows at both ends, and we're going to label the X-intercept and the Y-intercept. So the line is going to cross the x-axis right here. So I'm going to change my color to yellow, and I'm going to put a dot there. So this is called the X-intercept, because that's where the line crosses the x-axis. And then the graph is going to cross the y-axis right here. So I'm going to put a dot there. And I'm going to label that the Y-intercept. So we're looking at where the line crosses the x-axis and the y-axis. And those are called the X-intercepts and the Y-intercepts. All right, so to find the X-intercepts, we're going to let y be 0. So to find the X-intercepts, we're going to let y be 0. And if we want to find the Y-intercepts, we're going to let x be 0. So we're always letting the opposite variable be 0. So I'm going to write, let the opposite variable be 0. All right, so what we're going to do on the next slide is I'm going to give you the equation of a line, and we're going to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So our line is going to be 2x plus 4y is equal to 12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide my screen into two. I'm going to find the x-intercept on this side, the left side, and I'm going to find the y-intercept on the right side. Now for the x-intercept, I always need to let the opposite variable be 0. So for the x-intercept, I'm going to let y equal 0. So when I write my equation, everything is going to stay the same except for the y. I'm going to replace that y with a 0. So the only thing I'm doing is I'm letting this y be a 0. And we'll see what happens when that is a 0. Okay, what's 4 times 0?
0.
Yep. So this 4 times 0 is just going to give me 0. So I'm just going to cross it out, pretend like it doesn't exist, because all I'm doing is adding 0. So what am I left with on the left side? Just a 2x. And what am I left with on the right side? A 12. So now I just need to find some way to get x by itself. Since I'm multiplying x by 2, I'm going to do the opposite to both sides. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So when I do that, the 2's on the left side are going to cancel each other out. And I'm just left with the x. On the other side, I've got 12 divided by 2, and that's going to give me 6. Yep. So x equals 6. When I write my ordered pair, I always put the x value first and the y value second. So my x value is 6. That's what we just found out. But what is my y value? That's going to be 0, because we already assumed that y was going to be 0 before we even started. So the ordered pair is going to be 6, 0. So now let's find the y-intercept. Since I'm letting the opposite variable be 0, then I have to let x equal 0. So now I'm going to keep this equation the same. The only difference is I'm going to let x be 0. But I'm going to keep everything else the same. 2 times 0 is going to give me 0. So I can cross this term out. So I'm left with 4y is equal to 12. So now what can I do to both sides to get y by itself? Yep. I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So when I do that, the 4 and the 4 are going to cancel out on the left side because 4 divided by 4 is 1. So I'm only going to be left with the y on the left side. Yep. And then 12 divided by 4 is going to give me 3. So now I know that y is equal to 3. So when I write my ordered pair, x comma y, I'm going to let the y value be 3. But I'm going to let the x value be 0 because we already assumed that x was going to be 0 before we even started. Okay, so what does this look like when we graph it? Well, if we go over to Desmos, I'll show you what this looks like. We're going to have 2x plus 4y is equal to 12. And I'm going to zoom in. So you see the red line. Where does it cross the x-axis? 6. Yep. I'm going to click on that point. It'll turn black and it'll show you the ordered pair, 6, 0. Where does it cross the y-axis?
3.
Yeah, between 2 and 4. So that's going to be 3. Oh, okay. So I click on it and it gives me 0, 3. So that's a way you can check your answer if you're not sure about it. Okay, so that's X-intercepts and Y-intercepts. That's all you need to know about that. Let's do one more like that. All right, for this one, it's going to be 2x minus 7y is equal to 14. This is going to be my equation for the line. And I'm going to divide my screen in half. So I'm going to put the x-intercepts over here. And I'm going to put the y-intercepts over here. So this line is already in standard form. You can tell because it's in the form ax plus by is equal to c. And what I want to do is I want to let the opposite variable be 0. So for the x-intercepts, we're letting y equal 0. So I'm going to get 2x minus 7 times 0 is equal to 14. So all I'm doing is I'm letting y be 0 for now. We got negative 7 times 0. That's just going to give me 0. So I can cross this entire term out. So I'm only going to be left with 2x is equal to 14. So now if I divide both sides by 2, I can get x by itself. Make sure you divide both sides by 2.
7.
And you should get 7 for x. So the 2's are going to cancel out on the left side, leaving me with an x. And over here, 14 divided by 2 is going to give me 7. So when I write my ordered pair, my x value is going to be 7, but my y value, the opposite, is going to be 0. So now let's see if we can find the y-intercept. This time I'm going to let x equal 0. So if x is 0, I'm going to get 2 times 0 minus 7y is equal to 14. So the only thing I did was I replaced x with a 0. So now 2 times 0 is going to give me 0. So I can cross out this term. And I'm left with a negative 7y is equal to positive 14. That minus sign out in front of the 7y is going to tell me that that 7 is a negative 7. So when I divide both sides by the number, I have to divide both sides by negative 7. So the negative 7 is going to cancel out on this side, leaving me with a y. And then on the other side, what would 14 divided by negative 7 be? Right, negative 2. So when I write my ordered pair, my y value is going to be negative 2. My x value is going to be 0. Yep. Okay. The last one we're going to do together is this one right here. Y equals 2x plus 8. So this line is in the form y equals mx plus b. So it's not in standard form, it's actually in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form. But the same rules are going to apply to this one as they did to the last two. For the x-intercepts, I'm going to let y equal 0. So if I let y be 0, I'm going to get 0 is equal to 2x plus 8. So I'm just replacing the y with a 0. So this y gets replaced by 0. So now, to get x by itself, I need to do two things. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides to get rid of that plus 8. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So we're going to subtract 8 on both sides. Zero minus 8 is going to give me negative 8. I've still got that 2x right there. And then the positive 8 and the negative 8 are going to cancel each other out. So I can cross those out.
Negative 4.
Yeah. So now I divide both sides by 2. So I get negative 4 is equal to x, while the 2's over here can be canceled out. So my x value is going to be negative 4, but my y value is going to be 0. And that's my x-intercepts. All right, let's look at the y-intercept. I need to let the opposite variable be 0. So if I'm finding y-intercept, I'm letting x be 0. Now for the y-intercept, I'm just going to replace the x with a 0. So I get y equals 2 times 0 plus 8. For this one, the math is going to be a little bit easier. You're not really solving for an equation. All you're really doing is evaluating. So 2 times 0 is going to give you what? Yep. But then I have to add 8 to 0, and that's going to give me what? Yep. So y is going to be equal to 8. When I write my ordered pair, my x value is going to be 0, and my y value is going to be